Information overload syndrome is a direct consequence of the overstimulated world in which we move. Overload, which fuels stress and prevents us from thinking clearly and accurately. Information overload syndrome is the clinical name for what is known in popular parlance as information obesity, or intoxication. It is a condition in which the amount or intensity of information exceeds the person's ability to process it. When this happens, various symptoms appear, including stress, inefficiency, slow decision-making, lack of perspective, greater tolerance for error, confusion, anxiety, and so on. We know that each person may respond differently to information overload syndrome. The manifestations of information overload syndrome vary depending on two factors. The first is the subjective state of each individual. Secondly, the degree of informational stimulation that each individual person receives. The effects can range from a.f. New technologies have allowed us to gain more information than ever before in history. Although information overload has been talked about since the 70s, it is only in the last decade that the phenomenon has become alarming. The overload of information are. There is no standard measure for determining when a limit has been reached on the amount of information a person can receive and process. It depends on the age of the recipient of the information, their psychological state, their economic status and level. Generally, younger people and older people are more likely to develop information overload syndrome. Like people with fewer years of schooling, the poorest and, interestingly, those with fewer technological devices in their daily lives. In addition, there is an increased risk when receiving information that affects sleep or occurs in a noisy environment with a lot of sensory stimuli. The human brain has a limited ability to process a significant amount of information at once. What this body does is discard a lot of that information and prioritize the one it thinks is most relevant. This is the essence of attention, that is, the process. When you have to serve a lot of data at once, a phenomenon known as inattentive blindness occurs. The gorilla experiment, a classic in its genre, perfectly illustrates this state. This is due to the inability to perceive the apparent reality, because attention deficit more easily leads to error. Neuroscience suggests that the limits of the brain's ability to maintain optimal perception are directly dependent on the brain's cellular metabolism. This remains constant, no matter how many mental processes. Simply put, it doesn't matter if a person needs or wants to be attentive to 1,000 things at the same time. The brain, based on its biological processes, will serve only a limited number of these stimuli. From that moment on, it stops properly process.